Hello and welcome everyone to this episode of Pep Talk, Productive Environment Podcast. Are you ready for a pep talk? Because this is going to be a good one. So today we are talking about clutter, of course. Clutter is a decision, not a circumstance. Or is it? Barbara and I are going to discuss this today. So for those of you that are new to our channel, please be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, like this video and share this video if it impacts you and you know somebody else that it can impact as well. I am Andrea Anderson, CEO of Productive Environment Institute. I am here in Carolina Beach, beautiful today, beautiful Carolina Beach, North Carolina, and I am joined by...
I'm Barbara Hemphill, founder of Productive Environment Institute. I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina, and it's beautiful here today. The rose people came by today. My rose garden is just beginning to pop out. Not with roses yet, but gorgeous leaves. So I'm so excited.
Beautiful bird. The birds are chirping. It's such a pretty time of year. So hopefully wherever you're joining us from, you are enjoying some kind of beautiful weather today. But today you can see on the screen, clutter is a decision, not a circumstance. And you know, if you know us, you know that Barbara's famous quote for 46 years, I don't know when you first said that. Was it 46 years ago or somewhere in between?
It would have been not 46 years ago, but it would have been not very soon after that because it was a chapter title of the first book that I wrote in 88. So
okay. So somewhere in there, that clutter is postponed decisions. So if you guys have seen that, you've heard that clutter is postponed decisions. And so this led us to talking about clutter in general. And is clutter a choice? Is it? And the other thing I thought about this today is clutter is postponed decisions. Is it clutter is my postponed decisions or someone else's postponed decisions? And I was just talking with Barbara about, we're actually collaborating on a book together called Clutter is Postponed Decisions. And as I was working on the first chapter, discussing that clutter is a decision, let me put this back up so you can see it. Clutter is a decision, not a circumstance. I started coming up with questions for Barbara, and I started I caught myself making it, I don't want to say excuses, but justification. I caught myself justifying clutter for some people, not necessarily for me. I can say right now in my life that any clutter I have is based on a decision I made at some point in my life, whether conscious or subconscious, right? But then I started thinking, is that true for everyone? Then I remembered, and Barbara, I'm going to let you take it from here. Then I remembered you taught, and it's in your book, Love It or Lose It, Living Clutter Free Forever, that there is something called circumstantial clutter, circumstantial disorganization. So that made me start thinking. So I had all these questions for Barbara, and we're just going to have this discussion right here with you guys. And we want you to weigh in. So wherever you're watching us from, please comment, put a question. Do you believe that clutter is a decision, not a circumstance? Or do you think it is a circumstance? Like, let us know what you think, how you feel about it as we discuss. So Barbara, take it from here.
Okay. Well, another word you can use is there's circumstantial clutter, or I think
situational.
It's situational clutter.
Yeah.
And yes, there is situational clutter. I mean, situational clutter is when there's remodeling going on in the house, for example. We're getting ready to replace the windows all through our house. So I know that that's going to be true.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a new baby in the house, or you have a family member who's ill and you had to move them from one room to another to accommodate hospice, or a child moved home, or you've been out of town and traveling. Like when I go out of town and come back, it's always like the first 2 or 3 days after that, it's like, all the clutter that my husband created while I was gone and all that sort of thing. So yes, there definitely is. But, and you made an interesting comment, Andrea, you said about you found yourself making excuses. And I think they are excuses.
Mm-hmm.
In many cases, they are excuses. So there's so many principles that we teach in Productive Environment Institute that relates to this. One of it is that Organizing is about controlling what you can control so you can cope with what you can't. So my most personal dramatic story related to that is my marriage. I was married the first time to a man who was an absolute neatnik, the complete opposite of me. And it was so funny because I love to cook and I'm the world's messiest cook. And when I was done, the kitchen looked like a bomb went off. In fact, my daughter sent me a picture that said, messy kitchen's a sign of love. And she says, Mom, how do you make such a big mess? He enjoyed cleaning it up because his work was such that he was working on 5 and 10-year projects. And he said, this is the only thing in my life that I can clean up in an hour, so he enjoyed it. So I was like, wow, that was perfect. Well, I married the second time, and my current husband, to whom I've been married 38 years, is exactly the opposite. And the first 6 months of our marriage, I thought, this is going to be the end of my career because I can't organize. And we had 5 teenagers. So it was us and 5 teenagers, not all in the house at the same time because we had blended families and they all went back and forth. But you never knew how many of the 5 kids were going to be there. And in fact, one day the local newspaper came to do an interview about me. And I left my husband's chair the way it was. He had a big recliner and it was surrounded by newspapers and magazines because he makes money by reading the news and watching the paper and seeing what's going on in the stock markets. I decided to leave it that way, and the photographer took a picture of his chair and it went in the local newspaper. This is back when everybody was reading, paper newspapers. His son was in another city at that point. I think he was in college. He picked up and says, damn, that's my dad's chair. He recognized the clutter. So there are, but the real question is, can you control it? So how did I learn to cope with it? Because I still have clutter here because I'm married, and I think my marriage is more important than having a perfect house. But one of the things I learned, and I would have never believed it's true, but I've proven it for at least 30 of the 38 years, maybe longer. When I am feeling stressed about the clutter that he leaves behind, my very best approach is to go find some of my own clutter. Mm-hmm. And when I go clean up my own clutter, that gives me back that sense of control again so that I can cope with it.
Well, and there's some good comments here I want to share. You just said the sense of control. So Josh Hines says, this reminds me of the idea at the moment you decide to get your life together, cleaning your home is usually one of your first moves, right? That's the truth. Like, cleaning up the kitchen, cleaning up areas in your home. And then once it's clean, you can start looking at areas of clutter that can be removed.
Let me this is, I think, where a lot of organizing consultants or individuals get off track, because that's where they start, but that's not really the first step. The first step is to stop the problem. Because if the problem is something that repeats, so how many times have we talked to prospects who said, in fact, my most blatant example was a woman who said she hired 3 organizers in 2 states and paid over $10,000 and was worse off now than she was when that happened 2 or 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. She ended up hiring us to help her, and 2 hours into it, she was thrilled. And I said, so can you tell me what's different about what she did? And she said 2 things. One is, I never understood that my clutter was postponed decisions. She says, I just never understood that before. Well, that alone, and I learned that from clothes closets. That's where it started. Yeah. With clothes. It's like, my closet's got these pants in it because someday I'm going to lose the 10 pounds to get into it. And then the paper is the same way. And now you take it into the digital world, it's email. The majority of the population goes into the office and opens and closes email for 45 minutes and at the end have nothing to do with it. So first of all, you have to stop the problem. Then you got to figure out what's causing it. And that's where you find out whether it's circumstantial, situational, right, permanent.
I do agree with Josh on, though, just because there's a difference between cleaning your home and decluttering and organizing your home. Absolutely. So I agree with him on the cleaning, because if things are a mess and things are out of sorts, just messy.
Well, that's why the fly lady always said, clean the dishes in your sink.
That's right. Start with the dishes in your sink. Shine your sink. She said, don't worry about the stuff on the counter. Start with just your sink, because sometimes we're so overwhelmed with too much that if we start somewhere and clear that mental space. I have I'm going to share some more comments in a second, but you made me think of a quote I heard a long time ago. This is for business owners. This is for those of us that do have messy desks from time to time, right? We're not neatniks and perfect all the time. But I love this quote. It says, your house, or let's just say your desk, should be clean enough to be healthy, messy enough to be wealthy. And you're working on stuff, you're doing stuff, Josh said, make your bed. Yes, exactly. That is key right there. Yes. So clean enough to be healthy, messy enough to be wealthy. We don't want to spend all our time in the house cleaning and organizing and decluttering. We need to be building our businesses and making money too, right? So I love that. A couple other things here. We've got Kathy with New Path Productivity. Great question. They are so intertwined, and she's referring to decision or circumstance, right? And then she said, let's see here, a circumstance can lead to delayed decisions, which can worsen the circumstance. Ain't that the truth? If I can say ain't. Sorry, Mom.
Well, that's like the phrase we use often, pay me now or pay me later.
Yeah.
So prospects always have the question, how long is this going to take and how much is it going to cost? I mean, we all do that, right? I mean, my lawn guy came and that's exactly the question I asked him. How long is this going to take and how much is it going to cost? And the answer always is, well, we're not sure till we know exactly what you want. And when we say that, we have to be able to measure the end result, which is why our company very early on moved into package pricing as opposed to hourly practice, so that both we and the client are beginning with the end in mind.
Exactly. Yeah. And Carrie Thomas, another one of our specialists, said there's definitely both. So decision and circumstance. I always tell people that their organizational level is going to ebb and flow. I use those words all the time, ebb and flow, with what's going on in their life. And that's the truth. That's the truth. We're going to ebb and flow. Our stuff is going to ebb and flow. But however, there are times let's see. Let me show Josh's other comment here. But then do you go to the extreme of Einstein, who lived in dysfunction and was a genius? Yeah, that's true.
Well, I think that comes to the core of it. So the first question is, why do you want to get organized? What is it? And what I found through the years with both individuals and companies is that a lot of people don't recognize the cost in profitability, productivity, and peace of mind. They just, because they've lived with it so long, they've never talked about it. They don't want to admit it. They don't know what to do about it. And so they've really never thought about. And then when often it's something traumatic that says, okay, this is it. I've had it. So then it's like, okay, I'm going to get organized. Well, so the first question is, what does organized mean? I mean, why? How are you going to know when you get there? And what are you getting organized for? I had a sister-in-law who was always organizing, but I could never see any results of the organizing. It was just kind of shuffling things around. So that's one. And then the other thing that I think is what we talk about all the time, and this relates to Josh's comment, is who are you? We call it the art of organizing. And when I started in the business, I guess I'd been in it about 20 years, and one of my clients owned a franchise. And he asked me if I'd ever considered franchising my business. That was before Andrea and I were connected. And I said, well, yeah, I thought about it, but I don't know what to do. And so he said, well, let's talk about it. And so I started to go down the road. And then I realized, no, this doesn't work, because franchise means cookie cutter. If you go into McDonald's, you know exactly what you're going to get. Well, that's the antithesis of the way we operate, because we're asking clients, why are you doing it? And then the big question is, what will you do to get there? And the reason I do this after 46 years is God did not create any two people or any two organizations the same. So every day it's a new adventure.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Amen. I want to quiz you guys. I want to ask you a question. I'm looking at my draft of the book of chapter 1. Okay. So I want to ask you guys some questions. So look around. So think about the last time that you let paperwork pile up on your desk. Okay. Perhaps you told yourself you'd deal with it later. That was a decision, right? That was a decision that you made. When you saved thousands of emails without deleting them or organizing them, that too was a decision. Even keeping sentimental items that no longer serve you just because they were gifts. And you guys all know Barbara's Dear Aunt Sally, right? That was a decision. So according to Barbara's quote, Clutter's Postponed Decisions, every item in your space represents a decision you have yet to make. Now that's true whether it's circumstantial, situational, or otherwise, because you may end up having all of this clutter because of something occurred and now it's there. But the good news of this is it is in our power to make a choice. That's the good news. We can still, just as the past choices created the current clutter, and that could be the choice to remodel, the choice to take on helping a loved one, so those really are choices.
Well, I think there's one other choice is boundaries. So when you finish that, let's talk about the choice of boundaries.
Yeah. What I was just going to finish with was that the good news is that there are new choices that can be made to eliminate it. Okay. So the shift begins when you acknowledge your role in the process and reclaim your ability to, I love this, to decide differently. Okay. Go ahead,
which in a way is to set a new boundary.
Right.
Boundaries. There's a wonderful book called Boundaries, which is written a long time ago, but it's a really, really good book. And I came to realize in my own life that sometimes it's easier to take care of other people than it is yourself. And I think for entrepreneurs, that's often true, because a lot of entrepreneurs, probably most, maybe not most, I would say most entrepreneurs are in business because they have a passion to help other people.
Yeah.
And as I've shared, sometimes I've struggled with depression through the years. And whenever I was struggling with depression, I never had any trouble helping other people. I could always do that because it lifted me up. It made me feel better when I was helping somebody else. But when the depression was really attacking me, it was when I couldn't help myself. And then that would take me farther down into that pit. And that's where one of the PEI principles is together we are better. And part of the reason that our Sword of Success program works so well is because people are in community with each other and seeing that they're not the only ones that struggle with it. I'm getting ready to do a big speech for 300 people, and I was interviewing some people before who are going to be in the audience. And so I had asked I wanted to customize what I was saying. And I started this conversation. He says, before we say anything else, my office is the messiest office you've ever seen. I said, I can assure you that's not true.
Doubt it.
But everybody thinks and when I meet somebody at a party and somebody says what I do, and Andrea, I know it happens to you all the time. Oh, you'd just die if you saw my office.
That is so true. That is one of the most heartwarming things we see in our Sword of Success program when we get together. I mean, we have an online training piece too. And we actually tried to sell that years ago by itself. It's like, hey, just sign. You guys have all signed up for courses. And so we had an online training course where you just sign up and go through the modules. Everything's there. It's Barbara teaching. It's all there. And very few people actually did it. Very few people actually went through it. And then we said, okay, people need each other. Let's bring them together in groups of as a group on Zoom. And so that's what we're doing now, and it's so much fun.
And accountability, each other and
right. And one of the most heartwarming thing though is when we hear them say, "I thought it was only me. I thought I was the only one." It's so nice to be here with other people just like me. And our age ranges in there probably are 40 to 80.
40 to 80.
40 to 80, honestly. Mostly women, but we're getting more and more men, which is so much fun. We've got husbands and just other men. So it is for both. And it's just such a relief for them to realize, okay, my paper clutter, I'm not alone. My digital clutter, I'm not alone. So not being alone, being together in a group and working on it regularly. That's the other thing we learned. We did these boot camps where you had a certain amount of time to come through and go through the classes together, and then they were done. And you could either continue on your own, or you could join our long-term program. We've combined those all together into one program now. And most of our people, most of our SOAR members are in it for the long haul. They're with us at least a year, if not more now, because it doesn't end. I mean, that's the bad news, guys. I hate to say it. The clutter, well, I don't want to say the clutter doesn't end. The information coming in doesn't end. As long as we're living, you are going to have information in the form of maybe not paper forever, but it's certainly still here now. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then, and some people have lived in their homes 30, 40 years, and they've got 30 and 40 years worth of paper that they're now making decisions on. 20, 30, 40 years. They're now making those decisions to remove it. So, but as long as we're alive, information will be coming our direction. And so that leads us to what's the solution? And I love that we always go back to Barbara's 5-step productive environment process. So I think we should just walk through that briefly with this in mind. Whether the clutter was circumstantial, situational, or decisions, or whatever the reason. State your vision. What do you want?
Well, and I think for the listeners, one thing that would be helpful would be don't think of clutter massively.
Right.
Think of one place where clutter is bought, and maybe it's your desk. So a lot of you probably sitting at your desk now, maybe it's your desk. Maybe if you're a real estate agent, it may be your car. If you're a stay-at-home mom, it may be your kitchen counter. So think of, and it could be your spice drawer, or, it could be your closet. I am just adamant that having your closet organized is really critical, because you see it every morning and it is how you start your day. So think of that one thing. And so then the first step in our process is state your vision. Mm-hmm. So if the closet or the kitchen table or your desk were organized, what would it look like? How would you know? How would you be able to measure it? So in my case, for example, Andrea, you asked the question, what messy is? And I wrote in the chat it says, my desk is messy right now. Friday is my cleanup day. So right now it's messy. There's stuff around because I'm working on 4 or 5 projects, and there's some of it, and I leave it all around, and that's just who it is. Mm-hmm. It doesn't stress me because I know how to clean it up, and I can go back and do it. So state your vision in something you can measure.
Right.
Secondly, then, is to identify your obstacles. So I would suspect that probably 80% of the people listening to this is, I don't have time. I mean, we all say that, right? But 2 things. One is the things we don't like to do or we think are difficult, we always estimate that they take longer than they really do. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is we underestimate how much time we do things that really don't matter in the long run, going through social media or something like that. So we're very big about, identifying your obstacles very specifically. Then that takes us to the third one, which is commit your resources. And so when we're working with prospects, one of the first things we always want to know is, depending on what they're organizing, but let's say it's their desk. And so if what they're organizing is their desk, it's like, okay, what tools do you already have? What are you using now? What are you using now that's working? What do you not have? Oftentimes it's their calendar. That's always a big issue. I mean, if your calendar is not working, whether it's paper or digital, that's going to be a problem forever. And you're going to need a calendar until the day you die. So now's the time to do it. So commit your resource. What software are you using and all of that? That takes us to step 4, which is the most important one. I grew up on a farm in Nebraska, and my daddy always used to use the phrase, where the rubber meets the road. And step number 4 is create and execute your plan. So it's in order to reach this vision, overcoming these obstacles with these resources, here is the plan. But how many plans work the first time? That goes to the 5th one, which is where most people falter. And that's where sort of success comes in, because everything, you've got to go back and adapt it, but you need to work with it long enough to figure out why it didn't work. And the best example is calendars. I cannot tell you how many times I've gone into offices where they have literally had hundreds of dollars of calendars, but they never used it long enough to figure out why they liked it or didn't like it. So everything that you say, think, or feel about your closet or your desk or your kitchen counter or your car is one of these 5 steps. When it's feeling disorganized, it's because probably just because you haven't sustained your success. In order to redo that, go back to the vision. Is the vision still where you want it, or has it changed? Because often it changes.
Right, exactly. And I think the best advice was at the beginning when you shared to choose one space, because some of you are listening right now and you're so overwhelmed that you don't know where to start. That's the other thing. People say, I don't have time to get organized. And then the second number one reason we hear is, I don't know where to start. So pick one place to start. And I have to comment, Barbara, about the closet. We interviewed Josh a couple weeks ago, Josh McMillan. If you guys haven't seen that, he's a visually impaired entrepreneur, and he organizes his closet by color. He color codes, so it's short sleeve, long sleeve, and color coding. And I'm like, well, how do you know the colors? I mean, you can't see it. And he said, because the material is different, and so he can feel, and so he knows if he's in this part of his closet, the clothes are red. If he's in this part of his closet, the clothes are blue or black or gray. And so he has, that's one of his systems. So the closet.
I have one tip for the closet or the counter or the desk that will make or break your success. And that is, if time is your problem, then say, okay, I'm willing to commit 1 hour a day or 3 hours a week or whatever. But here's the make or break. For every hour of organizing, allow 10 minutes for cleanup. What do I mean by that? So let's say you're going to go to your closet and you're going to work 1 hour. You're going to pick one shelf and you're saying, I'm only going to deal with this shelf. If you find something on that shelf that needs to go to the garage, do not take it there. Put it on the floor with a Post-it note that says garage. And then take the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And remember that in every organizing process, things will get worse before it gets better. That's why you want the 10 minutes at the end to go back and take the trash to the trash can, the things that go to the garage, the things that go to donate. If you do that, it's like rinse and repeat. If you do that an hour a day, every day, or whatever it is that works for you. But that 10 minutes of cleanup for every hour of organizing is critical.
Absolutely. Thank you for putting that in there. A couple of things, Barbara. You said Friday was your get yourself back together day, and Josh says Saturday mornings are a clean day for me. So do you guys, do you guys have a system? Do you have a day that it's like, okay, I'm going to regroup, refresh, restart? And then Joe, can we write out the 5-step titles, please? We will add those. I see you're watching from YouTube, so we'll make sure that we add those to the description. So Eds, if you can make sure the 5 steps are listed in the description box, that would be fabulous. All right. And then as we're wrapping up, Josh says, this reminds me of a business owner I once heard say, when someone comes in for an interview, we send someone out to look at their car and see if it's clean or dirty, because that mindset will ripple into their work.
Wow.
Amen. And Barbara, Demetrius, and you guys, he was on actually with Josh on our recent podcast. He does the same thing and he helps people get in shape and, fix their life and just wellness and the wellness, fitness and food and all that kind of stuff. And he said, when along the same lines, when somebody says, can you help me? I want to get healthy. I want to change my life. He wants to see their desk and he wants to see their car for the exact same reason. So really good stuff.
I always thought one of the things that counselors and therapists missed out on, because I have personal experience both with working with the counselors and with the clients. If they knew how they lived, they would know better how to help them.
That's true. Well, Barbara, I mean, my experience was in intensive in-home family counseling, and it was based on that concept. Anybody can go into a counseling office. I worked with kids, and any kid, I watched them fake it. I watched those kids when we would have them in the group home, and then we would take them in to meet with their therapist. They would totally fake it, and they'd be perfect, and the therapist would be like, "Oh, everything's fine." I was in the group home with them, and and even before the group home work, I was a family counselor in their home. I saw them with their family, with their parents, in their daily life. it's different.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
true.
So then we were able to give strategies for what really worked in their life, not just for an hour. And we worked together with a therapist to make it work. Not one didn't
Together
replace
we are
the
better.
other.
I mean, that's again an
That's right.
example of we need all. I mean, one of my first clients
Yeah.
was a hoarder with a psychiatrist, and all of us were with
Yeah.
U-Haul trucks the first day.
The whole team. It takes a village. So we are about to wrap up. I want to invite you guys, especially if you're new to us, to go to lesscluttermorelife.com. There is a 17-minute video there that you can watch to learn more about what we do, how we work. And we've mentioned our Sword of Success program several times. So you can find out about that by going to lesscluttermorelife.com. Everything we mentioned, we're going to make sure the resources are in the description. And thank you guys for chiming in. We love it when you participate. So please come back, like this video, share this video, and subscribe to our channel. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. Barbara, any closing thoughts?
James Clear in Atomic Habits says, you do not rise to the level of your goal, you fall to the level of your systems. If you need a system, we can help.
Amen. Thanks. Thanks, guys. See you next time.